Perhaps you're eagerly preparing to travel for your first international marathon, or looking to refine that travel routine after a chaotic experience. Having those travel logistics right can make all the difference. Today, I'm going to share my step-by-step approach when preparing to travel for an international marathon. I'll cover everything from the packing essentials through to some of those nitty-gritty traveling logistics. And stick around because I will be sharing some specific tips in each section to streamline your traveling experience. Let's get into it. Kicking off the video with the most important set of items you'll need, and that is your race day gear. To provide you with a little bit more insight into how exactly I packed for my international marathon, I'm going to provide a couple of checklists in some of the sections. Let's start off with my race day gear checklist. That is my shoes, socks, shorts, underwear, singlet, running hat, and my Garmin watch. When putting this list together, I started to think about what are the bare minimum essentials I need to get me to the starting line to actually run the race. And this is where my first tip starts to pop up, and that is to pack all of your race day gear into your carry-on baggage. The reason why I suggest doing this is to ensure that you have all of these essentials in case for any reason your checked-in baggage doesn't arrive at your destination with you at the same time and you may be a matter of days away from race day. You'll save yourself so much stress knowing that all of the essentials are literally boarding that plane with you. Coming in now to race day accessories, you're probably thinking, Jack, you've actually missed a few items. Now, when I compiled this list in particular, kind of went in with the thinking that say for some reason if the accessory broke down or for some reason I couldn't access it here in Melbourne before traveling over, I'd know pretty confidently that I could actually replace these items before the race itself. So here is what the race day accessories checklist looks like. Race belt, heart rate monitor, GoPro, gels, electrolyte tablets, contact lenses, strapping tape, and anti-chafe balm. When packing my race day accessories, I'll also remember to include my charging cables for my watch as well as my GoPro, so they're fully charged, ready for the race. With my electrolyte tablets, they're actually in a pack of 4, so to ensure I don't lose them across the marathon course, decided that I am going to actually stick them to my gels that I can take simultaneously at the same time when I get near an aid station. That way I'm not running any risk of taking the first one and then having the other 3 spill out as I try to open my running belt again. We get to the second tip, and that is to pack all of your race day accessories into one bag. This could be investing in some of those packing cubes that we see nowadays, or just a smaller bag, knowing that every single accessory you need come race day is in the one single spot. Now you can also pack all of this into your carry-on baggage if you want. I found though, particularly when traveling, having my laptop and other electronic devices, my bag gets quite heavy, so tend to put these items into my checked-in baggage. Now, I will say when it comes to traveling logistics, it's actually going to be very dependent on where exactly you're traveling to. So I've tried to keep this section of the video as vague and as applicable to different destinations or situations as possible. Starting off when traveling last year for the 2023 New York City Marathon, only having 3 days before the marathon race itself. This didn't leave me too much time to actually adjust to the conditions over there, as well as let my body clock reset, traveling halfway across the world from Australia. Compared to doing the 2024 Chicago Marathon, I'm actually traveling over a full week earlier to allow my body to adjust to the time zone. If we're talking about marathon races in general, oftentimes I found it's a lot easier to stay closer to the finishing line than it is the starting line. Luckily for the Chicago Marathon, the starting line and finishing line is very close together in comparison to the New York City Marathon. However, both my experience in New York and soon to be in Chicago, my accommodation has been right near the finishing line itself, not having to walk more than 20 minutes. You gotta remember, your body has just completed 42.195 kilometers, so you want to minimize as much friction as possible. So this is why I've opted for the Chicago Marathon to go through a marathon tour operator to 1, get me my bib entry into the marathon, and 2, to look after accommodation and knowing and putting my faith into the experts to know that I'll be as close as possible to that finishing line after crossing it. Carb loading is very obvious when it comes to marathons, but something that tends to go neglected is the hydration component, especially for people like us if we're traveling significant distances to run the races that we want to. This is why I've decided to pack some electrolyte tablets for taking both on the plane but also in the week leading up to the marathon itself. I've also scheduled a dedicated time to pick up my race bib, excluding any travel logistics or touristy things that we may want to see in that particular time. For the Chicago Marathon Expo this year, I'm actually going to be heading there on the last day of the expo, but would highly recommend going in the first 1 or 2 days prior to the race to ensure you have enough time to get your bib, but also access to any of the gear that you may be wanting to purchase at the expo itself. But to minimize the stress for me traveling in on the final day of the expo is organizing to get an Uber to save as much stress as possible and to stay off my legs too. Time off legs is so important in the day before the marathon, so once I've completed all that I've needed to at the expo, it's heading back to the hotel to rest up for the rest of the day. My best tip when it comes to your traveling logistics is to book your accommodation as early as possible and as close to the finishing line as possible. Particularly if you're looking to run a world major marathon, accommodation is going to be snapped up quickly, so you don't want to leave that to the last minute. All the travel itinerary, flight dates, and any other touristy activities you want to do can come at a later stage, but get that accommodation sorted straight away. Now, if you're not too sure on accommodation or where to stay exactly for your race, we recommend checking out any subreddits related to running in that area or that particular race, and even going as far to look at organizing accommodation through a marathon travel tour operator or whatever they call them. For me personally, that saved me so much stress not having to work out which accommodation option to take near the finishing line for Chicago. I thought I'd include this section on final taper week and what exactly that looks like for someone who's traveling a significant way over to complete the marathon distance. So for my second last week of the taper, I've got my final 16K long run scheduled the day before I fly out on the Sunday over to the US. Running in the US and being unfamiliar with the locations that I'm going to run in, aiming to only do 2 shakeout runs before the race itself. The first I'm aiming to do as close as possible to when I land in the US to allow that blood flow to get into the legs after sitting for an extended period of time. The second one, looking at doing that either on the Friday or the day before the marathon as one final shakeout run to get any jitters out that may have happened over the course of the travel week. I found flying over to New York last year, my legs did feel quite heavy after I think it was 18 hours of flying or so. So I do recommend getting out for at least one taper run or shakeout run as close as possible to when you land. While both shakeout runs, I've tentatively booked 5Ks into my Garmin Connect app for my watch to sync to. Not going to pressure myself. I feel like as long as I'm getting out there, moving my legs in this final week before the marathon, that's all I can really ask for. Traveling can be stressful, let alone having to also run a marathon too. Personally, my schedule tends to become quite basic the closer I get to marathon race day. I'm talking eat food, drink water, have electrolytes, and just completely rest. No, go over to visit the big silver bean somewhere near Grant Park. I purposely keep it basic to also conserve as much energy as possible and to not have to make any decisions suddenly. In a way, I'm trying to reduce as many decisions that need to be made as possible to conserve as much energy. Key marathon activities like breakfast shopping, bib pickup, as well as a flat lay of all of my gear have become a routine now when it gets closer to race day. This is so I know all of my essentials are sorted. Traveling far distances and being in unfamiliar environments, it's important to also control as much as you can, knowing that there are some parts that you can't control. For me, that's organizing all of my race day gear in a flat lay the day before a marathon and sticking to my pre-marathon race routine. I can't control the weather, how many people are going to be out on the streets, and if suddenly something goes wrong in my travel. It's a part of that experience, but knowing that I've controlled all that I can puts me in a better headspace. So there we have it. This is how I prepare when traveling to complete international marathons. It's exciting, nerve-wracking, but also such a life-changing experience. Speaking of running international marathons, feel free to share down in the comments below where your next race will be held. I'd be keen to see whereabouts in the world you're running. And also, let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this on the channel. All the best with your planning and preparation, and happy running out there. I'm Jack, and I'll see you next time. Catch up.